Welcome back, everyone. If you not only want to beat your opponents, but want to also take their soul in under 20 moves, then this video is for you. I normally advise against playing stupid gambits, but this gambit is a bit different. It's not a one-trick pony, but if black slips up then they lose, and if black plays perfectly, then white still has a somewhat decent position. So prepare yourself for the Halloween Gambit. The gambit starts after e4, e5, knight c3, knight f6, knight f3, and knight c6. I recommend this move order because it seems to more commonly result in the desired position. Once we have this 4 knights position, we can begin the slaughter. And just like any horror movie, when they think they've gotten away, you hit them with the jump scare. In this position, you hit them with knight takes e5. Black recaptures, and then you strike them with d4, taking the entire center. We will look at knight c6 and knight g6. If black goes knight c6, then you play d5, taking more space. If black then plays knight e5, then you hit them with f4, knight g6 and e5, pushing back the knight. Then you prepare to suffocate your opponent with d6. C takes d6 and e takes d6. It is now incredibly difficult for black to move his pieces. Black will now play queen b6 or queen f6, trying to get rid of the pawn, and then you play knight b5, threatening a fork. Believe it or not, the best move here is king d8, and even though white is down a piece, the position remains equal. After king d8, you play f5, attacking the black knight, knight e5, and then bishop f4, developing with tempo. Black will play f6 defending, and then after queen d2, white has a decent advantage. Black is completely paralyzed, and white can just slowly improve the position and then destroy black. A common and natural move here is a6, attacking the white knight, but this move loses. Bishop e3 attacking the queen, which must move to c6. Now we see the purpose of queen d2. We uncork queen a5 check, king e8 and knight c7 check, forking the king and rook and winning material. This gambit is so scary because black seemingly didn't do anything wrong, and yet they will now be down material with a worse position. Okay, but what if they don't go knight e5 and allow this? Well, this is also fine for us. If they go knight b8, then we play e5, kicking out the second knight. If knight g8, then we play d6, c takes d6, e takes d6, and now we see that black is getting suffocated. Queen b6 from black attacking the pawn, and then we play the common knight b5, defending the pawn and threatening a fork. Here we have knight a6 defending, queen e2 check forcing king d8, and we then play bishop g5 check forcing f6, and then bishop f4. The idea is that now the black knight cannot develop to f6. White now has a +4 advantage, and it is super unclear on how black must progress. Whereas white will simply castle, get the knight to c7, and try to get out the remaining 2 pieces. So now we've seen that knight g8 doesn't work. So black must play queen e7, pinning the pawn. We now play queen e2, and now knight g8. We now play the familiar idea, knight b5, threatening a fork. If black plays perfectly with knight a6, d6, and queen e6, then white will sit with a very small advantage and will then try to develop the bishops and castle. But a common error in this position would be to play d6, chipping away at the center and defending the c7 pawn with the queen. In this position, you sacrifice the knight with the brilliant knight takes c7 check, forking the king and rook. And after queen takes, then you take the d6 pawn with a discovered check and win the queen. So now we've covered all the continuations after knight c6. What happens after knight g6? Well, it gets scarier. e5, kicking out the knight, and knight g8 from black. Here you play bishop c4, pressuring f7 and preparing to play queen f3. Another natural move here is d6, trying to play bishop e6 and trade bishops. But then we play queen f3 hitting f7, bishop e6 defending, and now we take on b7. Black then sees your bishop hanging and takes on c4, and you follow up with queen c6 check. Black can't block with the queen, otherwise he loses the rook, and so he has to play king e7, after which you take the c4 bishop. You have 2 pawns for the piece, black's king is in the center, and you have an advantage. Now what if they don't play d6 and play in the best way? This means they have to find this move d5, completely sacrificing the pawn. Bishop takes d5, and then black plays c6, bishop b3, and bishop b4. Here you castle, bishop takes c3, and b takes c3. Here black can play bishop e6, but then you continue to grab space with f4 threatening f5. Bishop takes b3, a takes b3 opening up the rook. Now you have once again equalized and are actually slightly better. You can now try and use your pawn majority and more active pieces to suffocate black and continue the attack. Going back, if black instead plays knight e7 instead of bishop e6, then you still play f4. Black castles, and now the question is, how will you ever play f5? That's right, g4, taking more kingside space, and preparing f5 and a future attack. This position is still extremely complicated and difficult to play for black, and it's close to equal with white having better practical chances. And throughout this opening, white never feels down a piece, especially because of his immense activity and black's restricted pieces. If you want to further improve your chess, then check out this video. It will contain a training plan, study materials, and a guide based on your skill level. Otherwise, thanks for watching, and now go destroy your opponents.